Welcome to Centre Court. Thanks to Cobram Estate, Australia's most awarded extra virgin olive oil, grown, harvested and first cold pressed in Northern Victoria. Centre Court is where we take a deeper look at the athletes, coaches and voices who define netball in Australia. The conversation unfolds in 4 quarters, giving our guests room to share who they are away from netball, the highs and the lows of their career and the future they are building beyond the court. It's honest, it is reflective and it's the side of the game that you don't always get to see. Today's guest is arguably one of the biggest names in netball. She's an icon and a legend whose impact has spanned the globe. She's a former Australian Diamonds captain, a World Championship winning coach, and one of the most influential figures to ever shape the game as both a player and a mentor. Today's guest is Norma Plummer AM. Norma, it is a pleasure to have you here on Centre Court. I've got goosebumps talking about having you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm delighted to be invited.
We do start every episode by asking a simple question, thanks to Priceline Pharmacy, we know health and beauty. What season of life is Norma Plummer in at the moment?
Well, it's technically called retirement, but all I can say, it's pretty boring actually, especially when you've had some of the highs that I've been through over my time in life. But yes, I mean, I get that feeling, I could still be coaching, and then I think of, a 6 o'clock weight session pass. I think I've done it all. But I sometimes watching a game, I can get a little bit frustrated on just looking at, the structure on court, and I think I can fix that. But I guess at this stage, you always have to accept where you are in your age group at that stage. But I am going out with a couple of the old umpires tomorrow.
Oh.
So, because we're all around about the same age now. And, so many of us are still kicking, so that's nice.
No, I love, and we're going to delve into your coaching philosophy because I cannot wait to pick your brain. You're one of, like we said, the most influential coaches that we've had, and I can't wait to delve into every part of what makes you who you are. But I do want to talk about what makes Norma Plummer tick at the moment. I know that you've got a role with the Vixens. Can you explain to us what that entails?
Yeah, it's the List Management Committee. So I guess at this time of the year now, it's pretty full on with meetings on that because it's all about the contracts, who might come off, who you might want. Vixens is a team that's probably at the moment pretty settled, but there's opportunities there, and we want to support the coach on what she might need. But it's also, I think, again, just having that support for the coach, and with Sherelle McMahon being the players management, we all slot in together and work out if there's any issues. It's about trying to fix that, keep it smooth, keep it running well, and make it as comfortable as possible for everyone.
We know it's a pretty interesting time in the sport. It's the second time in a few years that we've seen every single player off contract. Is that a positive or a negative situation for you on a list management committee?
Well, I guess, for me it's okay, it doesn't affect me. But actually if I was a player, I think it'd be a bit nerve-wracking unless you were probably, pretty well a diamond and would get picked up anyway. But to see younger ones break through, I think at the moment where we are with the game and so many imports, like when I was coaching and running the AIS program, all of those players that sort of left after the 2 years when their scholarship finished, straight into the CBT team, top 7, because they had overseas trips, they played international, we were playing in the CBT as a team. So, I think for today, the younger ones coming through, it must be a little bit worrying whether or not they'll get the opportunity. So, yeah, as I say, for us, it's looking at the group out there and, not only the Australian players, it's international that are all the managers putting their players' names out.
Yeah, that's it.
So there's plenty of that there, but I guess what you need to do is make sure that what you're selecting is also going to be a team where you have a lot of options with them. I think in today's market, you know, to be a one-dimensional player in one position, unless you're a 7-foot goal shooter, you know, I think you need a little bit more flair in a couple of places. Although we always did like to have, even in the Australian team, and when I was playing and also when I was coaching it, you know, say a wing defence that could cover centre or cover goal defence, you know, to have the two positions. I think that's just a good feather in your own cap.
One of our favourite episodes was Julie Corletto. She was a GD, wing D swing, and, you know, there's so many players.
One of my best players ever.
I was going to say, we'll probably get to that later. I need to ask you about if you have any favourites. I have no doubt that Julie Prendergast is up there. But let's go back to your childhood. Now, we know Norma Plummer, who she is as a coach and as a player, but we don't really know much about you as a child. What was your childhood like, and what values did you learn in your childhood that carried through to who you are today?
Guess you'd call it probably a little bit of a tomboy. I loved animals, and I have 2 or 3 dogs, but I also loved horses, and you know, I used to think I was the Annie Oakley of Clayton North, you know, riding around. But, you know, my cousins had horses too, but had a great upbringing with that because you had a lot more freedom than where you could. Today, you wouldn't let your kids just go off. I might go at 9 in the morning and wouldn't come home till 5. I'd be on the horse and we'd be out and about all the time and loved it. And then at primary school, there was one teacher that I absolutely, you know, well, I was a little bit scared of him at first, but he absolutely directed me in the way of sport and playing, and right up until even when I was captain of Victoria, he came into Festival Hall to watch games. So someone like that can have a big impact on you and, you know, like put you in a direction that you might not have gone in.
So it was always netball for you? Was there other sports that took your interest, or from the minute that you started, did you know that you loved netball?
Yeah, I did. But, you know, it was called 7-a-side basketball back then. So there really, again, you didn't have a lot of the other options. You know, I didn't know. I don't think women were even playing the basketball at that stage. But I think just at that stage of your career when the passion went to the netball, very much so.
Well, the last thing I do want to ask about your childhood, and it's something that we have grown to love about Norma Plummer, and it's the fact that you don't shy away from having an opinion. You've got a personality. You are who you are. Were you always that as a kid? Was there a little bit of cheekiness to Norma Plummer?
I don't know. Maybe. I did even at the primary school got captain of the school. So
Leadership's always been in your blood.
I must have been doing something right in the teacher's eyes. Yeah, I guess it was just about being social. You know, I do like mixing with people, you know. So really, nothing was ever, like, I never really designed where I was going. Even to be playing coach for Victoria, they asked me. I hadn't put in for the position or...
That was just a revolutionary position to be able to be a playing coach and...
Loved it.
Bring it back.
Best thing ever. Didn't have to wait to quarter time, half time, move it now, you know, sort of... Oh, no, I thought it was terrific. I really... And I was already doing it because when I got that invite into the Melbourne Netball Club, Anne Henderson, that's the statue at Royal Park out there, and like she was in charge of the Melbourne Club, and we had all these players, but she was also a primary school teacher that coached the primary school state team.
Yep.
Right? So all the cream was coming into the club. Right? So, you know, the competition within the club was pretty strong. And, you know, we'd have something like 7 teams, but you didn't have a coach on the sideline back then. So you were put into a team, you'd turn up on your Wednesday night and Saturday and to play, and you had to pick a captain of the team, and they wrote out the score sheet of all the names.
Oh my gosh.
You collected all the money because you had to go in and pay. We had to pay to play.
Yeah.
And there was no one there, excuse me, at each quarter or half time to tell you what to do. But I love studying the game. And so Joyce Browne and say players like Gina Cedar and Jeanette Cato, they were in the senior teams and playing on one another. And if they were playing before me, I would be there watching them.
Wow.
If they were playing after me, I would stay and watch them. And I tell you what, you learn a heck of a lot. And I don't see players doing enough of that, but you'd be amazed on what you pick up and you think about things. So on the tactical side of the game, I was always really invested in. So when I, was finished up playing coach, and it was Julie Hornwig's mother that was on the board who walked over to me and said, "Listen, Victoria hasn't got a coach. Would you like to, be playing coach?" Oh, first of all, she said, "Would you like to coach the team?" And I said, "Oh, well, I thought I was good enough still to play." And she said, "No, I was playing coach because you're doing it." Won the Nationals in 77, 78, outright. I didn't stand in 79. I thought I'd better give back to the family, because we're always at netball. So, and I just loved it because it was a freedom that I had but you could direct on court. Fantastic.
Let's talk about, it's a great way to move into quarter two now that we've touched on everything, childhood and Norma Plummer and netball, but it's where we dive headfirst into the netball journey thanks to Cobram Estate, Australia's most awarded extra virgin olive oil, grown, harvested and first cold pressed in Northern Victoria. Let's talk about the 1975 World Champs. It's a landmark achievement for you. What are your strongest memories from that campaign?
Oh, worst accommodation you could have ever had. Seriously, if you think of Dracula's house or Herman Munster, the Munsters, that house, that's what we were put in. It was a backpacker's place.
Wow.
I was only telling this, we did see some of the Vixens and they were there some weeks ago this year, and they sort of were standing there asking us about it, and I think they were a bit surprised. So Joyce Browne was coach, and we turn up at this backpackers, and it was called Rocklands Hall. And the rooms were like, the school, prefab school buildings.
Yep.
Well, a few of those that they'd thrown down the back, and it was like open showers, and we were sharing, I think it was Scotland that we were sharing with, but then to go into the kitchen area through the back door, I actually took a photo of it. It looked like a demolition place, and you went in, and it was only toast and I think, Kellogg's cornflakes or something. That was it. There was no smorgasbord of food around for you, which they had to complain because you're dealing with athletes there. And then you could go into the lounge room, but then there was a staircase that went upstairs, which was condemned. You couldn't walk on it because you would have gone through it, right? So you weren't allowed upstairs. And in, back in your bedroom, in fact, our defender, Cheryl Sidebottom, couldn't fit into bed. It wasn't long enough. And they were hard beds, because it was only like overnight accommodation for backpackers, and probably a room 6x6, that was about it. So no TV, nothing, but we had to get together and we'd sit in the hallway and play cards or do things like that. And I remember Joyce did complain bitterly to them, to our hierarchy, but I think Eunice Gill said, "Oh, but we've paid $2,000 for this." So we are going back to 75. Now, I don't know if that was just a deposit or what, but we couldn't get out of it. One of the things though about it was the team was like, you know, we had South Australians, Western Australians, you know, quite a mix, which today's market of the players, there were, the styles are much closer, of all the same. Back then you'd know a Western Australian player because they'd hop out, and, you know. So there'd all be these different types of styles on the court, and you had to mix in, and timing of how you were going to feed the ball to one another. So a lot of that, you know, our first training session was terrible. I thought, oh, Joyce is going to kill us. But we picked it up. But we also had to get better at being as a social group together. So playing the cards and games and stuff like that really brought us together. But of course you played, I think it was 12 teams that were in it, and you played 11 games. You had one day off, but it was whoever finished with the most points, no finals. So for the last 3 days, the way they worked it, England played New Zealand on the third last day and beat New Zealand. So the second last day, New Zealand gave themselves the rest because it's in Auckland, right? And we played England and got them by 5.
Wow.
They were shattered. They thought they had the best team. And then on the last day, it was Australia and New Zealand, 34 all, and we still won because it was on a point system.
Oh, wow.
They'd lost. We actually didn't. So we had to win or draw.
Yeah.
And it was in the rain.
Outside?
Outside.
Oh my gosh. It's just crazy to think how far we've come. I mean, that was 75 and you're saying you're staying in backpackers and it's just great. And on asphalt, and it's awesome to hear you reflect on that and just know how far we have come as a sport. But I do want to touch on your...
Great.
It is. I mean, gosh, I don't think the girls would be happy staying in a backpackers now. You captained Australia in 1978 and we've spoken about you're always a leader and being social was part of your identity. What was your leadership style and why do you think you were given that captaincy in 1978?
Well, it was 77 actually and 78, because... you know, because I was playing coach for Victoria when they'd asked me to do it. You know, I made the Australian team and so they named me as also the captain. I think it was, you know, I was always willing to bring players in, you know. If we were going to be teammates, we had to be able to communicate and work together, you know, and always compliment someone when they're on the court and doing good stuff. You know, I think if you want to have a relationship with all your teammates, you know, I think you've got to show that appreciation for one another. And, you know, Marg Molina and I, like she was goal attack, and we had this sort of connection where, you know, you drive up, be on the top of the circle, and she'd be setting up and I'd, you know, going to give her the bounce pass, but I'd fake it in. The defender would come around and enclose it. And you know what? They fell for it every time. So the old balk on the pass, and then so Margaret would look at me and we'd have a little grin on our face, but not being arrogant about it, was just that was our connection. So we had a lot of fun on that sort of thing, and certainly knowing your rules was really, you know, some players didn't really read their rules sometimes, but you had to know what you were doing there. And also, as I said, I love studying the game, and Western Australia used to put this press only around the diamond defence down the back of our, like on our attack end. And that often, like, we struggled with it, but we never practised against it. So the minute I was coach, every Tuesday night, we trained against that. Now, I didn't know at that stage how I was going to beat it, but when you work against it, it shows up, right? blew them out the water, because you're not scared of it anymore, right? And then Queensland would put on the press and playing New Zealand on the press and, teaching how you had to do some dummy drives and then open up a channel on the other side of the court so we could swing it. I was amazed at some of the top players that I'd coached when I took over, had no idea on some of that, they just played. They didn't actually study the game, which, as I say, that was part of me. I don't know why, I just loved that part.
Well, it's definitely why you had the coaching career that you did and why you took your teams to the promised land so many times. Let's talk about your tenure at the Diamonds, though. You get given the coaching role in 2003, am I correct?
Yes, at the end of that, that was after the World Cup, and unfortunately they lost that. And it was a lesson I learnt from that. Everyone was retiring. I told players no one's retiring. If we're at a World Cup, finishing your game.
Yeah.
Don't go into a game retired.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's a lesson that you learnt after the...
watching that I did, yeah, because there was 4 of them retired, and I just felt they thought it was going to happen, and it did, and all of a sudden New Zealand, with Ruth Aiken coming in, they were structured better. She was a terrific coach manager, and they started doing what we used to do well and started to do it better. And that wasn't the quote from me. That was actually from the coach at the time, made that, she realised. So, yeah, I think I didn't get the chance until after Christmas, to pick the team up in 2004. And, yeah, it started off a bit rough when I made a comment to a reporter about, had an interview with the Canberra Times, and, all went well. We finished the interview, packed up his things, and I walked him out the door, and he just looked back and said, Norma, so, good luck. And I said, oh, no worries, bunch of scrubbers. Now, for people then, I don't even know why I said it. Just trying to be funny, I think. But you see, when we played, that was you're playing the bottom team, right? So, of course, he put it in the paper the next day on headlines, and I had to go to the Commonwealth Bank Trophy breakfast that was on in Canberra. In Sydney at Darling Harbour. And so when I got there, I got out of the cab and I looked up and I thought, oh, a lot of reporters. And next minute, oh, they're coming for me. And it was like they were running down the stairs, and they were all the Kiwi ones, of course. And I didn't back away from it because I did say it, but I didn't say it in the, interview. Which there's another lesson.
That's off the record.
Yeah, that's off the record. But even then, this guy, he burnt the basketball coach a couple of weeks later. I don't know if the Canberra Times might have sacked him after that, because the AIS got a bit sick of it on what he was writing up about the coaches. So anyway, I faced it, but there was, they were so, wild about it. And I said to him, look, I'm a female. I'm not being derogatory to females. I said it was just, when we played, that was just the bottom team. And the kids at the AIS were funny because they ran up to the library and got a dictionary out to read what the word scrubber meant. And it said, and I'll quote you, right? It's a cow or horse left wild to run in the scrub. It's a team contrived of unskilled people thrown together, a bunch of scrubbers. Thank you very much. And I had it cut up. They loved it. So I had that little slip cut up. And then when they all started on me, I'd hand out of the dictionary, right? But of course, Brooke, my daughter, said to me, I go, what did you say that for? And I said, well, it was just a comment that we often used to say, well, we're going to play the bottom team and they're going to punch us. And she said, well, it's a bit different on the meaning today. And I said, well, I'm not around the clubs, you know, how would I know? But you know, funny enough, I don't know why it came out, except Magdalena's sister, who we all played together, when I was in Perth at one time, she said, oh God, they're just a bunch of scrubbers. And thank you very much. Because it was part of our vocab back then, you know. So, yeah, but I think it was a current affair after a while in New Zealand, wanted to have a one-on-one with me about Norma Plummer, the person. And so I thought, oh, okay, I'll do it. And she said, you know, more about you as the person than the netball. But of course it got around to, well, you've probably had a pretty hard time off, you know, our media. And I said, well, yeah, I said, I've had one. I said, most of them were pretty good. But there was one guy, he really got me when we were on the middle of the floor and we'd played a game and I think New Zealand had won that one, and he said, oh, so I suppose you think we're cheating. And that really, I was a bit in shock. Anything, I've always played the game to the letter and in the rules, you know, I don't have to step out of that area. And well, I looked at him, I said, well, yeah, well, the only cheating be done around here if I was married to you. So that went all over New Zealand. But after that, people finally got the humour, and, you know, then I couldn't go down the street without having a lineup wanting to get my autograph. And I think then New Zealand, you know, because it's a great place, beautiful country, and I've got a lot of good mates there. And so I think then they started to understand it. It was just a throwaway line at the time, but it just shows you've got to be careful, it can get you into trouble.
Absolutely. Now I sit on the other side of the fence. It's always, how are you trying to find the angle? But I think that's what we've grown to love about you, Norma, is that, you know, netball can be a place where you conform to a team environment and maybe the personalities are snuffed out, but your personality is one of the best that we've had in the country and in the sport. I do want to touch on your coaching philosophies though, because I never had the privilege of having you as a coach, but I know a lot of people that have, Ash Brazel being one of them, and she can't speak more highly of you as a coach. From your point of view, what is your coaching philosophy? What are the key things and the basics that you really drove into your teams?
Well, I guess, you know, with all the Australian teams, you got the luxury when you're a national coach, you know, like when all the teams come in, it's not like you're getting this underdone group, you know. They've all been playing in this, the #1 competition in the world, so it's a matter of blending it together. And as I said, it was about, to me, I want to give them something, you know, different to their club as far as even like drills and our approach to the game. And I think I'd say to, you know, assistant coaches, and Nick Cusack was with me probably the longest, and terrific shooting coach. And, you know, we have to have different drills. We've got to come up with stuff all the time. And so I think also I'm probably more of a defensive coach, because I think attacking, as long as you're working the space the right way, can take care of itself as long as you've got your basics and can pass a ball. But, you know, I love the, as I said, the tactical side and breaking down how we're going to beat the opposition. And I always like to think that I could look at a player and know this is her favourite move. So, you know, I might say it was Liz Taverner actually on Kath Cox. She likes to cut across all the time from the goal attack to wing attack. When the ball's coming down, that's the move. Block it off. Don't allow it. Changes everybody's game, right? So you, I just don't see enough of that these days. You really have to, like, I think, take away, as I say, their favourite moves, and players do them consistently because they get away with them, and you'll see a totally different person having to try and work out something else. That's why you've got to have options. You must have options within your game, you know, and you've got to be able to swap leads. You've got to be able to, whether you're taking a straight drive, whether it's going to be like double dodges to throw off a player. There's plenty, and I think the one after the Commonwealth Games 2010, and we lost that in that longest game in history, in the triple overtime. Maria Folau, you know, she was just fantastic. She shot everything. I didn't have Coletto. I was down on a bit of defence that year, but she just didn't miss. So we lose that game, and I thought, you know, I've seen her miss. But I can guarantee you none of the defenders went back and did it, but I watched every game she played in the New Zealand League the next year and found that if we moved off her shooting arm slightly to the left, and I hammered them, and I can remember saying to guys, "See, don't you change this, you know, move across. As you're there in front, move across so you're more in line with her arm." She could have sidestepped, but she never worked that stepping rule, hardly. And then they'd go up on the shot and she would move it and twist her hand. I think we dropped it to 74%. Now, you tell me what players do their own breakdown on players these days. I don't know if they do.
Do you think that's
such a winner if you can?
Do you think that's the missing link? If you were to go into a club at the moment, say you took over a club, is that what you would implement?
Well, that's what we did with South Africa.
There you go.
South Africa just, they just ran, you know. There was really no structure to anything. And I can remember saying to Bongi Masoni, she was our centre, so when the ball's coming out of defence, she's over on the wing defence line, on the sideline there. And I said, "What are you standing over there for?" She said, "I'm allowing the defenders come through." I said, "Honey, you're the centre, right? This is your domain, this is you. You know, yeah, they can come through, we want them to, but you're going to run from there to get down to the top of the circle." So there was things like that. And Erin Berger, I think, said to Nick Hughes, "God, I wish we knew all of this 10 years ago." And all we just hammered the basics with them because they didn't really look after a ball. And it was all about you weren't allowed to drop the standard. We taught them that, you know, the warm-up couldn't be just like messing around. But God, did they grow. I loved coaching them. And then, you know, you got to see Pumza Mawali and Carla Pretorius finish up playing for Lightning, winning the first two grand finals, and I was rapt because Nolan was coaching them as well. But that combination, just, yeah, fantastic. You know?
You moved over and coached South Africa. It's a change, and when people said, "What's Norma Plummer doing, taking on that role?" You absolutely developed that country into becoming fourth in the world in 2019. That journey, what was the most rewarding part of it? You've obviously touched on the combinations that you've made, but seeing that country go from
to
fourth?
They used to get beaten. I looked it up. See, again, I didn't go after the job. Blanche Della de Grue, who was the CEO, and I'm still in touch with today. I love her to death. She's great. She kept on me. The World Cup, when we won in 2011, the World Cup in Singapore, she kept coming up to me saying, because she knew I was stepping aside, "Please, will you come and coach us?" But I said I'd go over and set up the program for Perth because, you know, they chased me to sort of go over there and see if I could set it up, you know, their boats programs and everything else, which I did. And then as soon as I finished that, they were on to me again. So in the end, I said, well, okay. And And as I said, it was one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had. But in looking at it, the athletes were there, but they used to get beaten anywhere between 35 and 55 goals on all the top teams. And I said to the hierarchy of South Africa, we have to start by getting them to learn how to cherish the ball and handle pressure, and then let's just drop these score lines down. And over that time, you know, gradually but surely, that 2019 World Cup in Liverpool and Jamaica came out, and we had to get over Jamaica, and we had England and Australia too, but no, we had Australia, we didn't have, take that back, we had England and Jamaica. So that first game, I looked at Jamaica when they walked in, and they were doing all the reggae. You see, so I'm very, like, into that sort of thing. Oh, a bit of body language going on over there. So I said, I pulled the girls in and I said, now, see this? I said, they're very comfortable and I think they're going to get you today. But what we're going to do is keep that ball low and hard and work it fast. I said, they haven't played a team, you know, doing that standard of play yet. We've got to win. That I loved, because even in the third quarter they came back pretty hard, but we held it and got the win. Because we wouldn't have got even into the finals if we hadn't have won that game, you know. And then Australia only got us by 2. And it was because Bongi got us hit in the head. She had half a tennis ball hanging out here, so we had to take her off, of course. And when we had to do the change up, was the one pass, and Joe Weston intercepted it, took it down, and that gave them, you know, the one in front where we might have scored that. I still think we could have won that. It was just unfortunate that we had to have the change.
It's a privilege to sit here and you talk about all of the teams you've been involved in, and also just the difference in coaching that you've had to apply for each team. When you talk about Australia, though, I would love to know, do you have a cherished memory of your time in the Diamonds, whether it was playing or coaching?
Oh, a lot, like 2007 World Cup we won. That was fantastic. Probably one of the most underrated players that I thought was just sensational was Selena Gilsonan. She wore Laura Langman, and I've still got cuttings where Langman's trying to dodge and get away, and Gilsonan's just, you know, covering her, and next minute Langman gives her a shove in the back. That's the only way she could get rid of her. And if we ever played the men, they used to call her the Rash. So, oh, she was excellent. But that team grew brilliantly and had the 2 Von Berto sisters. And we talked about we would overload one side, suck them over, and then the shooter in the attacking would come out the opposite side because they were all overloaded here. We had a passage straight off, and our speed did it. Anyway, I can remember at half time, and I said to both of them, right, I think you need to change it up now, because I said, you know, you're doing it all the time. And they said, but it's working. I said, yeah, but if they actually wake up to it, you have to have these other options, you know. So it was about how you tactically could have to change things up. But they just were a group that were absolutely focused on getting that. And I think we didn't win by 1. I think we won by 3 or 5. So I was pretty rapt.
Norma, we've got 2 more quarters to go, but that has been some of the best storytelling we've had on these episodes, and just hearing your insight into the journey that netball's been on from 1975 to 2007, and how much influence you've had in it. It's been a pleasure to sit here and listen to that. Let's move on. Let's add some sugar thanks to Stratties. Gear up this season with Stratties. Shop with Stratties because because they're your buddies. Stratties.com.au. So this is our quickfire section. Okay, I've changed the questions a little bit because normally we ask what's your favourite dress and maybe the hardest opponent you've played on if we're talking to players. But I have some questions for you that I need to know. Okay, most difficult selection decision you've had?
Commonwealth Games. No, the World Cup for 2011. It was an interesting. We had some players come back that had been off for a while, and then all of a sudden, McMahon does her Achilles. Bang, she's out. Next minute, Lauren Nurse goes down, her wing attack. She does a knee, she's out. So I'm at the selection and I'm thinking about, what can we do here? Because the one thing you always, as a coach, regardless of what people think, you're actually dealing with athletes' lives. And a lot of the athletes, they put their heart and soul into it. But sometimes it's not because they've played so well. It might be the mix you need on court that connect better. And that is like sometimes the overriding factor why one might get in and the other. Anyway, so I was looking at it and had Clark Perry, he was one of the sports psychologists at the AIS, was Karen Perkins's main guy. And I asked him if he'd come down and the girls could talk to him if they needed to. And he turned around and he said to me, what's wrong with you though? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you look sort of like you're really worried about this. And I said, well, yeah, I am. I said, I've got to work out how I think we can replace the speed that I've lost there, but with difference, And
I know who you're going to say.
yeah, well, it was the two goalers and both played wing attack. So, put in Erin Bell and I had Chelsea Pittman there because I loved her hands. She was so strong around the edge of the circle. But also, Jolene Henry struggled on her because she was just as big a frame, And anyway, he said to me, why don't you bring in, your leadership group? And I said, but they're all standing for selection. He said, don't tell me you're not going to pick them. And I said, well, yeah, they'll probably make it. But, that's just been the norm. He said, well, if I was you, because I said to him, if I make these changes, sometimes you don't know if the team's going to actually warm to that. And he said, well, bring them in and ask them. So I thought, oh, this is different. Anyway, so I did, had the selectors there and so it was Kath Cox, Monia Gerard and Natty Bomberto. And he said one other thing to me. Sometimes big business, they get their big theme that they're going to work on and say, he said, but often the employees don't really buy into it. He said, so it's the believability of whether or not you're getting this right, okay? And I thought, yeah, it's true. So they came in and I said, look, okay, I'll start by saying, okay, the three of you are in the team, of course, Kath, well, yeah, of course you're one of the leaders. So anyway, I said, look, I'm trying to fix up how I want to, cover the loss of the two players in McMahon and Nurse. And I said, and I think, how would you feel if I took Erin Bell, who can play goal attack, and I don't even think I got the next bit out of wing attack, and Coxie's gone, play with Erin any day. And then I said, when I was thinking of Pittman, because I love her strength around there, and she also can go into goal attack, because the goal attack position was worrying me after losing McMahon. And Monia Gerard said, give me Pittman any day. And then Natty Bomberto just said, that's fantastic. And I knew I had it then. But it was funny because normally I wouldn't have included them, but it was a selection where I really felt under the pump to get the team right. And as it turned out, it won, and it was fantastic, that team together. So, hated selection, to be honest with you. And then, I don't know if it happens these days, I'm not sure it does, but we used to have to give the feedback to the players. And, you know, you don't want to, I can't, in all honesty, sit there and say to a player, oh, you know, like you need to, you know, go back, you're not fit enough. And sometimes it was. You did everything right.
Do you remember who the player was?
Yes, and you will too. It was your sister. But it was the mix, you know.
Of course, and it worked out in your favour. They ended up going away and winning.
No,
and
it was hard, I think Renee Ingles missed out on that one too.
She did.
So, you know, like it's not easy, you know, picking you, because you know that, as I say, you're dealing with athletes' lives, so I don't have to worry about it.
Okay, my next question is your most underrated skill of a player.
Oh, right. Where do I start? Well, firstly, defenders, they use one action. Do you know there's about 11 styles of defensive structure you can go up on a shooter? And I look at them and I think, same, it's the same. She's just shot. That's why I changed it with Falau,
yeah.
right? They all just did one action. They either jumped or they just hung. And even on a hang, you know, it's like there's an inside hang, there's the windmill, there's like, so you can go right hand, you can go left hand, you know, you can do a single jump, you can do a double jump, like there's so much. And what I used to say to them, like, so if a shooter's shooting straight over the top of you, you're ineffective. Change what you do. But most of them don't. So that annoys me, because I'd really like to see better structure there. And then shooters that don't use the footwork rule that's there for them. Don't do a sidestep if they felt the hand was in, you know, like, or often you'll see they come into the circle, get the ball, and then they're looking around, they're still playing the game and the defender is reading it. Why not take the ball in the circle, put it up, get them committed, then dish off and go. See, to me it's common sense, but I don't see a lot of that. Some players can do it, like Sherelle was excellent at it, but, you know, like those rules, you know, they're there to be used and the players don't. I'd like to see Garvin, when she bounce passes a ball to the outside wing, put it out further. You know, they won't get a hand on it, you know, like, yeah, just things like that. See, I would hammer that because to me that's your standard. You don't drop that standard ever.
So if you're full on with basics and standards and everything
your games
like that, absolutely it does. Who is the best coach in the SSN right now? And I know you've got an affiliation with Vixens and Di, but based on your philosophies, who coaches the most Norma Plummer way, maybe?
Oh, I don't know if it's Norma Plummer way, but I mean, I think Di's doing a good job, and you got to remember that she's inherited this team, and that's not being detrimental to the team, but she has a chance now, if she wants to change things, to pick her own side, right? And sometimes that's very important. But I've always been a bit of a fan of Tanya Obbs. I think Tanya's smart. Yeah. I really do.
Yeah, and she made some smart moves on the weekend, that's for sure.
And she's very good on picking all the right players. She's got my Elmarie Vandenberg, you know, from this, you know, Proteas, like, God, she's just a gem, that kid. She's fantastic.
She is a star. I cannot wait to see what she does in the grand final. My last question on our quickfire, actually I've got two more. Is there a player that has challenged or changed the way you coach? Is there one player that's influenced your coaching style the most?
That's a probably hard question. Probably a bit dogged on the way I coached. So I might not have been as forgiving, but you get different sort of walks of life. in players. And I always felt like Monica Gerard to me is one of the best I've ever coached. But she had this bit of a chip on her shoulder, I think, at first. But now, like when I'm having my big birthday, she tells me, well, I'm coming. You know, it's like...
There's a respect.
And she would send me texts when she was in England and, hey, Plum, I'm missing your face.
Aww.
And, you know, that's lovely. But I understood her, and I think, you know, I always got, you know, some great stuff out of her. I remember she was about 18, came into the AIS, and at this stage, you know, it was the under-21 sort of selection area, and she's got basketball boots on, see, so I said, oh, you got your basketball boots there? She said, yeah, I don't know if I want to be a netballer yet or play basketball. And I said, oh, I said, so you're 18 now? And I said, see down the court there, down on that other court, right down the other end, they're 15 and 16. That's the gems. I think you've missed the boat. I think you can play netball for us. And she did get it, you know, but I used to throw things like that at them, and yeah, and, you know, like, she's the best. You know.
No, she's a star.
So much love for her.
That kiss on the cheek of Sherelle McMahon goes down in netball lore. We love it.
Yeah.
Okay, my last one for the quickfire is, if there is a game that you could relive or a moment that you could relive, which one would it be?
That Commonwealth Games, yeah.
2007?
No, 2010 in Delhi.
Oh.
You know, that was just...
I know the one you're talking.
Yeah. And that's the one where Maria shot all the goals. That trip was so hard because they'd bombed Mumbai, and so we were stuck in the athletes' communes and stuff, and couldn't go out. And yeah, it was really hard going because the cleaners came in the first day and you know, walked around with all these rags, you know, go in and clean the toilet and come out in the same rag cleaning the table. Mark Molina said, thank you very much. But we couldn't let them back in the door. You know, we got through that because I think our hands were covered, the skin coming off with doing the Dettol, you know, wipes and all that. You know, sit down at the table, Dettol, before you touch anything. Like, we had to go through these routines, and we got through pretty well. We didn't get anyone, like, some of them got a little bit of a belly, but really we got through that, and that was really important to get through that without losing them, you know, with bad...
sickness, yeah.
Yeah.
But you would relive that one again?
Yeah, exactly. I would love to, mainly because of, you know, the game. I think it was a mistake to the umpire, when we would have scored the win, the umpire, Kim Green, hit the top of the circle, you know, but took the ball, then pivoted on the heel, and he said stepping, took it off us.
Oh my gosh.
I filmed that up for him and told him a couple of years later. He said, can I see it? I said, sure. I sent it to him.
Did he apologise?
Oh, I always had a good relationship with a tit for tat with a lot of the umpires, you know.
Norma, that is what makes you you. That's maybe one of the best quick fires we've done. Right, let's get into some of the more difficult conversations. We know that elite coaching comes with a lot of intense scrutiny, and no doubt throughout your 10 years through the Diamonds in South Africa you would have dealt with a lot, but your time at West Coast Fever was the one that probably gave you the worst feedback. You received death threats during your time at West Coast Fever. You're laughing about it now.
Yeah, but it was from a New Zealander.
Right. So at the time that you're dealing with that, how do you overcome that type of scrutiny?
Because it was funny. Brooke, my daughter rings me and she said, something funny's come up on your Facebook here. And I said, oh, right, what's that? She said, oh, this guy's, you know, saying that, you know, he's going to get you, and, you know, he's going to, you know, I don't know exactly how he was going to get me, but he was going to get me, and you know, I shouldn't be coming into New Zealand. And anyway, I said to her, oh, he's probably had a few drinks, and you know, and she said, well, I don't know. But Jan Danaher, funny enough, was my manager, and of course. I said to her, have a look at this, and she said, oh, I don't think we should mess around with it. So I think she told Neil, and then next minute I've got the federal police coming in to see me, and they said, look, you know, you can't take this lightly. And I was still sort of in a little bit of denial, really. You know, I just kept thinking, because this idiot, mind you, what he did is when he sent the note, he had his photo, he had his email address and his phone number.
Did they get him?
Yeah. So, but that's what was funny. I thought, that's why I said to Brooke, oh, you know, this is not like he's been out drinking or something. So anyway, they contacted, it was Dunedin, I think we were going, and next minute I've got bodyguards walking around me. I felt really like stupid actually, and but the police there, because he had his address, they went and knocked on his door, and they said, "Oh, you've been caught out giving threats to the national coach of the netball and Australian netball." Turned out he had been out, and he was pretty tanked at the time. And he said, oh, well, yeah, I know, I just did it because, you know, she keeps beating us and spoiling us.
So it was about you winning? Was it about you as a person?
No, it wasn't about me as a person. He didn't like me as a person because, you know, I'd made the scrubber comments, see, and also that, you know, we were winning games. So, yeah, and I've still got his photo on my phone, to be honest with you. Because
you look at it
do have a laugh about it.
If you ever need a laugh.
Yeah, but I mean, they were right. It could have been where you wouldn't want to be going into a stadium and someone, like, you know, attack you or knife you or whatever, and then you're with your team. That's going to blow the whole evening. It's not one of those things you're expecting at a netball game. So
I love that you're not worried about getting knifed. You're more worried about it affecting the evening. That's what you just said. Let's talk about setting high standards as a coach, though, because one of the things that you have to manage, and I've received a spray that has gone viral on social media, and I have no doubt that during your time you had to dish out some sprays. How did you manage dealing with having to be tough on your players and say tough things, and also getting the best out of them and nurturing them as well?
I see at the moment, you know, all the coaches, so, you know, you've got all the coaches are up, whether you've got 2 or 3 coaches in all at different areas. Like, you know, when Nick Cusack was working with me, and you've got to remember, all the years when I did coach a Victorian team, you weren't allowed an assistant coach. Mm-hmm. You were doing it all yourself. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you got used to that. And so I liked that she worked with the shooters. But when it came to that end bit, I needed the team there because I always targeted where it was breaking down and we're fixing this. But everybody had to know what that change was going to be, because the ball's still going to come down, and if you're not tuned into what we're changing here, well, that's not going to work. You know, it could blow us out the water if they. So they needed to all understand what it was. You know, might have been with just hammering the left-hand side of the court. You haven't opened up and, you know, swap leads like shooters, swap leads, centre court, wing attack, swap leads, change it up. Throw out the whole pace, and yeah, just those sort of things. I was very much structured on making sure where we were actually labouring, I would have to target that, and you know, that once you targeted that, it seemed to still work. And I did say to players, look, if I'm not, you know, all over you and giving you feedback every quarter, It's because I'm pretty
You're
happy
doing all
with
right.
you. Yeah. Yeah, well, it was because, you know, I don't think if you don't do all this at training, and constantly I'd be saying to them at training, this is the feedback, you're dropping the standard, let's pick it up, you know. Even I remember we were in England and Liz and Sherelle were both in the team and they went out to do the warm-up and they were terrible. So when they came off, I said, well, that's the worst that I've seen you warm up. And Liz, if you're not going to take control of this, I'll come out and do it. But I said, I'm telling you now, you're going to be on the back foot at the start of this game. Yeah, we were 7 down the first quarter. But Sherelle had come up to me later and said, oh, we didn't really appreciate that, what you said. And I said, well, bad luck, but you won't do it twice. And they never did.
So you're coaching.
So there's the spray that I didn't care. They needed to get, like, and I actually said it to England, or to Anna Mays when I was mentoring her. I watched their team, they went out, and it was in Bendigo, and they were all structured differently, like some were still going, others had come to the bench. There was nothing where Australia's going bang, bang, you know, Australia's doing it all and all. And I said to Anna, I think you're going to be in trouble. And I said, they're not connected. And she said, oh, that's what they always do. And I said, yeah, well, I think you're going to be in trouble. Sure enough, they were about 10 down at the end of the first quarter. So she went back and told the players, and they, you know, they didn't like it, that this Australian coach. But next time they picked it up and they went with Australia all the way. So it's identifying that, because that, it actually is looking at you. They're too relaxed, they're not actually thinking about the game.
You can pick up body language, like you said, with Jamaica. Body language is a big one for you, I've gathered out of this whole podcast. Well, we are coming to the end of the podcast now, Norma. You've given us some absolute gems. But this is the part we love. It's the legacy quarter. Now, for you, it's a bit of a different quarter that we get to talk about because you've lived your netball journey and you've left your legacy, which is a huge one. Again, I get goosebumps when I talk about it. But let's take a look at your HCF moment that matters. Now, we talk about this in, it could be a moment that changed your coaching career or one that is just incredibly important to you. What is your HCF moment that matters?
Look, you got a list? I
go.
would have so many. No, it's just coaching the elite athletes, you know, like, and playing with them. And it's great to still be involved now, even though it's not on the court, but feel I'm assisting still, you know, because Victoria, I started in town at 14, so I'm still there now, 81. So, you know, I'm such an old bird now. So, and I don't worry about age really. People like to hide it, but it, you know, it is what it is. So I think it's just the whole thing, you know. I've had ups and downs, yeah, but the big wins, fantastic, you know. And one of the ones was the very first World Youth Cup. We were in Toronto, and I had Coxie, Eloise Southby, Susan Meaney, Peter Schultz, Jackie Delaney. I had all these players, and New Zealand had 4 players that already made their silver ferns. So we knew we were going to be in a big game. But we were 3 down at 3/4 time, made a change, and we got over the line. And Kath Cox played the best game I've ever seen her play and shot the lights out.
You have influenced countless players, coaches, teams throughout your journey. Is there a moment or something that gives you the most satisfaction out of your journey that you look back on and say, I did that, Norma Plummer had this influence on netball in the world?
I think possibly the South Africa in the 2019 group, mainly because we were really starting from a low base, and to see them develop, and we got England 3 times. You know, we actually finished up getting Jamaica. We actually did beat New Zealand, but they made a mistake on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
But Nylene came over and said to me, "You did win that," which I thought was very classy of another coach to admit we'd got over the line. So in that essence, it's fantastic to know that this team that was running about 7th or 8th then got up and took on the top ones in the world. Australia didn't have to do that. Australia were already at the top, so we were mainly, you know, just targeting really one grand final with the Ferns all the time. But that was a different story, and it was brilliant.
Lastly, to finish this podcast, which has been one of my greatest joys, is for you, looking back, we know what we would say about Norma Plummer as a coach, and I know what the entire netball community would feel towards you. But from your point of view, what do you hope the Australian netball community says about the legacy that Norma Plummer has left?
Well, I'd hope to think that, you know, development, you know, like I was always into selecting, you know, younger players, and I loved the AIS job. That was brilliant, and I loved to see them come in thinking they, you know, were pretty well tuned but couldn't even pick up a weight. So to see them develop over the couple of years and, you know, go on to be great athletes in teams, I think I'd like to be known that at least I gave every bit of my knowledge and even off-court advice if it needed to be, but I'd hope to think that I was fair and equal. Might have been tough on some things, but it was always for the team. It was you're employed by the organisation, and the team comes first then, and then, you know, individually, naturally, all your athletes. But you are employed, and, you know, you're employed to get the win for the organisation. And I was always very, very much aware of that, because you can be out of a job as quick as you're in one. But apart from that, Australian players always want to win. There was never an issue. You know, South Africa were used to of losing. So were Fever. They were pretty bad on that. They were always very happy after a loss. And that was different for me because I didn't come from that culture. And so, but we certainly got South Africa up there, and they learnt how to sustain the pressure and get the wins, and realised, you know, what it's like to keep a standard and you don't drop it at any time if you want to finish over the final baseline.
Norma, that sees the end of our podcast here on Centre Court. It has been an absolute privilege to have you sit in the chair, to pick your mind on your coaching philosophies, and to have you tell us some stories along the way. Thank you so much for your time and for joining in on Centre Court.
Thank you.